Good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to see so many people here with us today. Hello and welcome to Penning the Past, presented by SOHO, Save Our Heritage organization. I'm Dean Glass, and I'm so glad you could join us. Today's program takes us to the windswept bluffs of Point Loma and into one of the most intriguing chapters in San Diego's early history, Lomaland. At the turn of the 20th century, a visionary Theosophical community established an ambitious utopian experiment overlooking the Pacific. With striking architecture, bold spiritual ideals, and a commitment to art, education, and cultural refinement, Lomaland left an indelible mark on our region, though its story is often misunderstood or overlooked. Our speaker today, historian Eric DuVall, will guide us through the rich history of Lomaland, exploring the community's founding, its leading personalities, its architecture, and its lasting influence on Southern California's cultural landscape. Eric is a historian, writer, and preservation advocate who has called Ocean Beach home since 1958. Trained as a journalist at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, he is widely known for his long-running San Diego Union Tribune column, A Page from History. He currently serves as president of the Ocean Beach Historical Society, is a board member of the La Playa Trail Association, and was a 2025 recipient of a SOHO People and Preservation Award. Eric is the co-author and editor of the Arcadia book Point Loma and is currently developing two upcoming volumes on the history of Ocean Beach. If you have questions along the way, please put them in the chat feature and we'll get to those at the end of the program. And now, please join me in welcoming Eric DuVall for today's Penning the Past presentation, The Mystique of Lomaland.
Okay, thank you very much. This is a kind of a longer program, and so I'm going to rush through it. How's that sound? Keeps me from being so nervous. This is something I've done twice before in different versions, and so there are parts of this one that I'm going to rush through more or less. But if you have any questions, hopefully we'll be able to answer them at the end. I would like to thank SOHO for giving me this wonderful award last fall, which I was completely unprepared for and, of course, not worthy. But thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm just joking around. And I would like to point this out very quickly. Just yesterday, I was made aware of this report, the Urban Vitality Blueprint prepared for SOHO. And it is literally what it says, a data-driven analysis of equity, affordability, and vitality in San Diego's historic districts. And if you're interested in preservation at all, this is a significant document. So, and as a graphic designer, I think this was super well done graphically. So just want to point that out. You can, I'm sure, find a copy of it on SOHO's website. And that's all I'm going to say about that. The Mystique of Lomaland. This is just a title I used to have a title, but Lomaland was a very interesting community that developed on the top of Point Loma 120 something years ago. And let's see if now, this is funny. My cursor is not working as a pointer, but we'll get around that. This is a fairly early photo, maybe like, I don't know, pre-1910, I would say. You can see the Greek theater here in the middle of the photo. This little gate you see to its right is the Grecian gate. Just past that, over about 3 o'clock, that's what we call Pepper Tree Lane. We're looking north, as you can tell, toward Ocean Beach, and then past that, La Jolla. And the two big buildings with the domes are the Temple of Peace on the left and what they call the Raja Yoga Academy, or the Homestead Building over on the right. The square building in the middle was Catherine Tingley's headquarters, and we'll talk about Catherine Tingley. Now that is known as Cabrillo Hall on the campus of Point Loma Nazarene. So it was at Point Lomaland, a very interesting community. And, it's really, they first came to Point Loma in about 1897, but if you want to think about it as starting in 1900, that's a pretty good round number. And we'll come to it, but they said they always called it Point Loma, and I'd like to emphasize, there was no community known as Point Loma, before the Theosophists came. There was um, a geological formation, Point Loma, but there was a community in Roseville, community in Ocean Beach, but there was no community called Point Loma before the Theosophists came. And I just like this photo of the kids on the beach. This is one of my favorites, and you'll hear me say that several of these photos are my favorites, but because these could be any kids. So these are the kids on the beach, like I was mentioning, and except for the cliffs you see over to your right, this could be like any kids at any time on any beach, except that this happened to be at Lomaland along Sunset Cliffs 120 something years ago. Okay, and these are several famous surf breaks out here, which would be something in the future. And then I just want to do a little brief mention of the Point Loma book by La Playa Trail Association, 2016, which is 10 years ago now. It doesn't seem like that long ago, but I prepared the chapter on Lomaland in the Point Loma book, which may or may not have been when I started collecting some of these photos. And I would like to shout out Ken Small, who helped me a lot on this book, on the Lomaland chapter. Both his parents grew up at Lomaland. And when I was a kid, there were these streets up, in the neighborhood of what was then Cal Western, Temple Street, Lomaland Drive. And I didn't think anything about it. They just sound like street names to me. Now there's a Tingley Lane up there. And I had no idea that they referred to something that had been up there on the point in the old days. You see these tall Canary Island date palms here. Those were planted by the Theosophists. I certainly did not know that either in those days. And here is Catherine Tingley. And she was a very interesting woman. And I'll talk about Catherine Tingley. That's a fairly good photo of her on the left.
I'm just seeing the one picture of people at the beach.
Yeah. And so it's not progressing.
No, it isn't.
Caramba. Well, so
There we go.
so you can see it now. Okay.
Yeah, we still see all your thumbnails on the side.
Yeah. And if I go back here, what are you seeing now?
It is. I still just see all the slides on the side and but I see Catherine's photo.
So this should be the slide of Catherine Tingley, and then the exhibit from San Diego State. But you're seeing the whole thing, huh?
Yes.
I mean, you're seeing my. Well, that's so weird.
That's better than nothing, though. So if you want to just advance manually, that would be fine.
Okay, well let's see what happens. What does that look like? Does that look like California Utopia? Or you still see the whole thing? I mean, you see
I see Catherine Tingley's photo still.
Geez, this is not advancing somehow.
No.
Hmm.
Try that.
Well, gosh, that's really weird.
We had problems last month too.
Really? How about that? But you still see my stuff on the side?
Yeah, but that's fine as long as we can see the photos. I think that's fine.
Okay. Okay. Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I was going to say, and we'll go back here. We lose my transitions that I like so much. Well, we'll live without that. There's on the right was part of a really beautiful exhibition they had out at the library at San Diego State. And I say a couple years ago, it's probably at least 5 years ago, that was co-curated by Ken Small. And they have a lot of this stuff out at San Diego State.
Your picture still didn't change. We're still saying
it didn't, huh?
No.
How about this one? Do you see California Utopia there?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the basically the best book to date on the subject, California Utopia by Emmett Greenwald, and it's really a wonderful book, and you can still find this book. This now did that change, Dean? Can you see the Point Loma house?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So And this is just a little story that my pal Bruce Coffin and I wrote last year sometime about the Point Loma house. And most people have never heard of the Point Loma house, an old hotel built on the top of Point Loma right about 1900. And I'll come to that in just a second. You can find this online, by the way, if you are interested. It's behind a paywall now, but it's up there. We're just going to talk briefly about Theosophy. This woman is Madame Blavatsky. The Theosophists like to use initials. They referred to Madame Blavatsky as HPB, Helena Petrovna Blavatsky. She was a Russian occultist, seerist, etc. She held seances and so forth, and she really developed what became known as Theosophy. And it is as if it sounds, kind of where theology and philosophy meet. And she was interested in Eastern religions and so forth. These two volumes, this is Isis Unveiled and The Secret Doctrine, both of which are several volume treatises written by Madame Blavatsky, and those form the basis for what came to be known as Theosophy. She formed the Theosophical Society with this guy, Henry Steele Alcott, this guy with the big beard, and William Quan Judge, who was an Irish immigrant to the U.S. And let's see, so I'll move this up here. This gives you a little bit of an idea. I hope you can see this all right. But the Theosophist rejected deterministic, materialistic world as suggested by Marx, Darwin, and so forth. And they felt that God was an impersonal force. Souls evolved toward perfection. They believed that life was governed by karma, etc. They believed in reincarnation. And now this is so small I can't read it. But if you can read Catherine Tingley's quote there. But she came in for a lot of grief, mainly because she was a woman at the turn of the 20th century leading a large organization. And she was constantly having to correct misapprehensions that people might have about the Theosophical Society and or herself. Part of this story starts with General John C. Fremont because Catherine Tingley was basically a social worker. I left a part out. Following the death of Madame Blavatsky, it kind of splintered the Theosophical Society, and William Quan Judge led the American branch of the Theosophical Society in New York, and he found Catherine Tingley, who was, like I say, a social worker. She was a career do-gooder. She was working in what she called the do-good mission on the east side of New York City. And he liked what he saw in Catherine Tingley. And as I put somewhere, he wasn't looking for a successor, but he found one. Catherine Tingley was speaking to General Fremont, who was basically on his deathbed. She went to, see what she could do for him. And she happened to tell him about a dream she had had since she was a little girl, which was a white city on a hill overlooking the blue Pacific in the Golden West, where people of all races and religions and philosophies could come together to learn to be true and honest and noble. And she called it a fairy tale. And she described the place that she had seen in a dream as a little girl. And Fremont, evidently, this is the story anyway, said to Catherine Tingley, "Have you ever been to California?" And she said, No, I haven't. Why? Why do you ask? She was from Virginia. He said, "Well, I know the place you are talking about, and it's called Point Loma." Isn't that interesting? And so she said, "Really?" And this was right at the point in time where Catherine Tingley had ascended to become the head of the Theosophical Society in America, even though she'd only been with the organization for about 3 years. And I also neglected to say that she never actually crossed paths with Madame Blavatsky. Madame Blavatsky, I think, passed away in 1894, which was maybe 3 years before Catherine Tingley became involved with William Quan Judge. So when she became the leader of the Theosophical Society in America, Catherine Tingley immediately began a worldwide crusade for theosophy. And they had a group of crusaders, and they headed east across the Atlantic Ocean, and their goal was to go all the way around the world and end up on Point Loma, a place she had never even visited. And she sent her I say her herald, a guy by the name of August Nersheimer, out to find Point Loma and buy the property there, and also figure out how he was going to pay for it. She did a lot. She does it. She did a lot of stuff like this, but she got results. She was very charismatic, and as you'll see, many uh, formidable titans of industry and business um, became part of her group and helped her do things and so forth. And so, anyway, they were the Crusaders on the worldwide crusade for theosophy. I believe that they were in Paris, and they got a cable from Neresheimer, which said basically, no can do, unable to buy the property you request. It is owned by the U.S. government. And so, a fella who just happened to be one of the Crusaders, and this guy was uh, Gottfried de Perucker, who the Theosophists called GDP. He said, well, that's not exactly the case. He was a young man, like 20 years old or something, but he said, I used to live in San Diego. And this was before 1900. Not that many people had even visited San Diego, much less lived there at that time. He said, oh, yeah, the government does own the end of Point Loma, but there's plenty of property. It's probably available, uh, you know, um, just north of that. And so he drew this little map here on a cocktail napkin. Now he didn't. That's a joke. He didn't draw it on a cocktail napkin. But I'll go back to the map. He drew this little map. He wrote, "This is the place." And this is De Perucker's drawing of Point Loma and the island of Coronado. He shows where downtown is and all that stuff. So they were able to acquire this property. I think originally they bought 135 acres on the point. They acquired that property about 2 weeks before the crusade ended up in Point Loma. And so this really did a lot for Catherine Tingley's reputation. As you could imagine, her followers thought, wow, she actually pulled this off. And so this photo is of the groundbreaking ceremony for what Catherine Tingley called the School for the Revival of the Lost Mysteries of Antiquity, that she intended to build on top of the point. And that what that says on that banner is there is no religion higher than truth. And so San Diego at that time is 1897 had a population of about 17,000 people. At least 1,000 of those turned out to see these strange crusaders from back east. The mayor, who I think was Mayor Reed at the time, was in attendance. The city guard man played. It was quite an event out on the top of Point Loma, which was a windswept promontory, really, in those days. Nothing really out there. And this big crowd turned out to see the laying of the cornerstone for what would become Lomaland. And immediately, a couple of theosophists, one guy, Dr. Lauren Wood, the other guy's name was Opperman, they purchased some property immediately immediately south of the property that the Theosophists had purchased, and they started to build this hotel that they called the Point Loma House Hotel. And you see, there's just a couple news articles. This one said the Theosophists now own 235 acres on Point Loma. They ended up owning, I believe, more than 300 acres on Point Loma. Here's a photo from April in 1899. That place up on the hill there is the Point Loma House Hotel. And when I first started collecting these photographs, I thought, wow, they looks like they kept bees out there. But those were tents they set up for what was going to be the Worldwide Convention of Theosophists, which was set to uh, set to happen in 1900. Now you probably can see the cursor, though, right? Yes, no? I hope we're
Yes,
still
yes, we
broadcasting.
can. Sorry,
Yes.
I had them
Okay.
on.
That's okay. Anyway, so that's what that looked like in 1899. And a lot of I've heard people, including a buddy of mine, say that he didn't think the Point Loma house was ever open for business commercially, but in fact it was. And it was, these ads appeared in local papers. Go to the Point Loma house because it commands the grandest scenery and most equable climate in the world. And you may have heard, if you've heard anything about it, that the Point Loma house was a sanitarium. And in those days, that did not necessarily connote a nut house. It meant that it was a place where you might go to rest and relax and enjoy some fresh air, which was in abundance out there on the top of Point Loma. So here's the Point Loma house as it was completed in 1900. The convention, the International Convention of the Theosophical Society, was a smashing success out there. And immediately, Catherine Tingley asked Dr. Wood and Mr. Opperman to sell her the place, which of course they did. They were both Theosophists anyway. And so, guess what? Immediately, it's a beautiful looking place, diamond shaped building, porches going all the way around it. But immediately, Catherine Tingley set about remodeling the entire place. And so, these are fascinating photos. I mean, nobody has really seen what the Point Loma house looked like before, but as you can see, they changed they put in these big sweeping arches, they changed the way the verandas were, and very significantly, they put glass domes on 3 of the towers and one over the central courtyard, this big glass dome you can see being framed there. Here's another photo of the Point Loma house being remodeled. And then you can see this is just west of it. They built what was called the Temple of Peace, a beautiful round building there, which also had this famous glass dome on it. We'll go fairly quickly here, but I love this photo of this older craftsman and this young, he looks like 14-year-old apprentice working on some of these places. And it's just interesting, just to consider the fact that not only did these guys not have power tools in those days, obviously, there was no electricity out on Point Loma at all. And you can see a couple planes there on their bench. This young man is using a spoke shave to fabricate one of these panels that they made, these wooden panels that they put on these things that looked like tiles. It's very interesting the way they did all these places architecturally. So here is the place fully remodeled. Became known as the Homestead Building on Lomaland and or the Raja Yoga School. Okay. And then this is a photograph of the Greek theater. This I date it to 1901 because the Greek theater was built in 1901. I'll show you the plaque here in just a second. This photo is probably at least 1910 because this structure here, the Doric Stoa, which has been rebuilt several times in the last century, this was not put in until about 1905, maybe 1906. But here's a group in the Greek theater. Like I say, probably be about 1910. Here's the plaque, first Greek theater in America, built by the Theosophical Society, the International Brotherhood and Theosophical Society, they called it. I left that part out. I'm so sorry. Catherine Tingley had established a non-sectarian group called the International Brotherhood because people were critical of non-Christian, semi-religious groups in those days. And she created the International Brotherhood League, but they ended up kind of combining and becoming known as the International Brotherhood and Theosophical Society. Okay. Universal Brotherhood. I'm so sorry. I'm getting that wrong. Here's an early photo of the Greek theater. You can see the buildings of the Raja Yoga School behind it. Here's a great shot of the Temple of Peace. It was a beautiful building. People considered it the most beautiful building up on the hill. And I hope you can see this down in the left-hand corner here. It's embossed, and it says "Copyright KT." This is a postcard. A lot of these images they published as postcards. But anyway, copyright KT, Catherine Tingley. The other thing I want to show you on this photo is, I don't know if you can see these little 4 steps down here on this big wide staircase. But when I was a little kid, we used to play up there. It was Cal Western University at the time. And those steps, this is right across the street from Spalding's house, those steps went up to a big wide lawn in those days where we used to literally play touch football. And I had no idea that there had been, a place like this or anything else there before that. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the doors. And I don't mean Jim Morrison and company. These are the famous doors of the Temple of Peace. And these were remarkably saved from destruction. And they are in the collection of the San Diego History Center now. There's an interesting story I may or may not get to telling you about how they were discovered. But in some circles, the doors to the Temple of Peace, and they were carved by Reginald Matchell, one of the famous artisans and artists that Catherine Tingley brought out to Lomaland. The doors to the Temple of Peace are considered one of the most fantastic and excellent works of art ever created in San Diego. And you can see them now. They're on display. They were, for decades, they were just housed in a basement somewhere or something, but now they're on display. You can see them. And of course, everything was symbolic. The dog there you see behind the guy's leg. Well, we have the masculine and the feminine, of course, but the dog symboled fidelity. The lilies over by the woman's elbow symbolize purity and so forth. So those are the doors. And when I say the Temple of Peace, they took peace very seriously at Lomaland. In fact, here is the Permanent Council of Peace, which met in the Temple of Peace. In the middle, there's Catherine Tingley here sitting in the middle. I know the names of quite a few of these guys, but significantly, the guy standing behind Madame Tingley with his arms crossed, that's Godfried de Perucker. He's the guy who drew that little map. And 30 years later, he became the head of the Theosophical Society in the United States on the death of Catherine Tingley, which was in 1928. Another interesting thing about this photo is when I see these guys wearing these funny kind of Nehru jacket style uniforms. Evidently, those were sort of a rust color, and the folks down in Roseville referred to these guys as the Yellow Jackets, believe it or not. And but when I was Ken Small was helping me put some of this stuff together, I showed him this photo, and he goes, "I'll be darned, there's my grandfather," who I believe is that guy sitting there by the corner of the table. Okay, that's the International Council of Peace. And so these folks were early anti-war protesters. And this is a march for universal peace, protest the war. They were referring to World War I here. So they were protesting against World War I. Here's the Raja Yoga College band here. And their protests included little girls with flowers and the marching band and so forth. I'll show you that band in a little bit. I'm going to try to clip right along. Here's Catherine Tingley in her office at Lomaland. This is the best photo of Catherine Tingley. There's a couple of other ones. You usually see very severe looking photos of her. I don't necessarily think she was like that. But this says, to help you, let's see, I can't even read this, so small. Anyway, service to humanity in self-conquest, service to humanity. She was all about service to humanity. So in many ways, Theosophy under Catherine Tingley in the United States was a much more practical brand of Theosophy than practiced by the Theosophical Society of Madame Blavatsky, which is a little more spiritualistic and occultist. And I'm gonna ask you ladies something here. Not just ladies, but this was celebrating 100 years of the 19th Amendment. When do you think women got the vote in this country? And the answer is 1920. And so California being so progressive, when do you think women got the right to vote in California? And the answer to that is 1911. And I bring that up because women in positions of leadership around the turn of the 20th century um, frequently came in for quite a bit of flack. Women were still disenfranchised at that point in time, and so this and all of these are little stories in themselves, and we're just going to gloss over them. There's an article in the Journal of San Diego History with the very unfortunate title, Starved and Treated Like Convicts. This story details the um, lawsuit that Catherine Tingley filed against the Los Angeles Times, alleging that she kidnapped children, that she treated people like convicts, as you can see here, that the kids were starved and all of this stuff. And so she sued the pants off of the LA Times. Well, they settled. They couldn't prove their allegations at all because they were, it was, fake news, if you can imagine that, in the LA Times. But Catherine Tingley prevailed, much to the distress of the Times. But the judge did not award her the full amount, but at least she was able to prevail. But my objection to this is that for years and years, if you looked up the Theosophical Society or Lomaland, this is what you got: starved and treated like convicts, which might lead to people to believe that the folks up there were starved and treated like convicts. Think about that for a minute. Okay. And then this is the meeting of, this is the Southern California Editorial Association in 1912. There's Catherine Tingley in the middle. Why was she involved with that organization? And they had their convention up at Lomaland because they published several magazines up there on the campus of Lomaland. Here are these little girls on the lawn up there. I just love this photo. This is the early days. You can see the palms are fairly small there. The girls reading on the lawn by the outside of this little gazebo. Here's a beautiful photo. I like this one. This is looking north. This is we're looking straight down what is called Pepper Tree Lane. There, I don't know if you can see there. There's the Grecian Gate. I'll show you that in a little bit. There's um, the Greek Theater. But I want to show you over here on the right side of this photo. They farmed all this property. Lomaland was quite a self-contained community. Everybody worked in the gardens. Anyway, they grew their own food in as much as possible. All the kids worked in the gardens. The woman who alleged all the crimes of Catherine Tingley said she was forced to work like a convict. Well, everybody worked in the gardens for about an hour or hour and a half every afternoon. Adults, children, everybody pitched in. Okay. And here's the corn as high as an elephant's eye. Isn't that nice? And when I first found this photo, I still call this one Catalina cattle. They had a dairy. They ran cattle out there. This is right along Catalina Boulevard now. And so they made their own milk and cheese and so forth. It's kind of an interesting old ad for Point Loma Poultry. This was right down on Talbot Street, which was in those days known as Chicken Ranch Canyon. And you can see W.B. Orrell at Point Loma, or you can contact Fred Jennings down at the sheriff's office if you wanted a dozen eggs. And if Andy wasn't there, Barney would help you out. That's how it was. It was a small town in those days. But the poultry farm cooperated with the Theosophical community. There's a great photo showing what was called the Lomaland Department of Forestry. And here we're looking down toward what is now the foot of Ladera Street. Oh, I guess I can show you here. So right down here, this is Ladera and Sunset Cliffs Boulevard now. You can kind of see what is Ladera Street Canyon now. The Theosophists planted thousands of trees and shrubs on Point Loma. You can see a greenhouse here. There's a big old lath house they had going on here. It was a huge part of what they did out there because Point Loma was fairly barren when they showed up there, not when they left. The U.S. Secretary of the Interior came out even to visit the Lomaland Forestry Department to see how they were doing it. Okay, this is a great shot of Central Campus here. Over here to the left, that's Al Spalding's house. I'll show you that in a minute. Here's the Temple of Peace. Here is the Raja Yoga School. This is Catherine Tingley's headquarters, and I'll show you that also in a little bit. But you can see they had these fields and orchards. It was really a remarkable place. So here's the home of Alan Elizabeth Spaulding. This is about 1904. We are looking north toward La Jolla there. And it looks pretty much the same today. That's what it looks like now. This place is known as Mieres Hall on the campus of Point Loma Nazarene. It is administrative offices for Point Loma Nazarene. You can probably walk in there any day. And the campus is open to the public, by the way. Anyway, that's called Mieres Hall. They still, I believe, they light that little dome on top there these days. Here's Al Spaulding and his family in the what would become the basement of their home. You can see it right across the street from the Temple of Peace and the Raja Yoga School. Here's Spaulding's house under construction. Here is this shows the spiral staircase that's outside, which is a very interesting thing. I thought it was so cool when I was a kid, but it doesn't really go to anything, which is sort of an interesting thing about it. It just goes up to the roof. You'd think there would be like an observation deck or something up there, but there is not. This is actually two interior photos. They're side by side here, but the place is beautiful inside. You can see these carved panels here on these archways carved by Reginald Matchell again. And I was telling Dean before we got on the air here, I have a Point Loma home tour program. It's a SOHO tour from 1982, and it features the home of Al Spaulding on the cover, an illustration. But according to the folks at SOHO, Al Spaulding's house is one of the most architecturally interesting and significant homes ever built in San Diego. Still standing there, 126 years ago. Here's Al Spaulding built himself a little golf course down the hill from his place. This is Spaulding's house up here. There's the Temple of Peace up there. We're going to go through these kind of quickly, but did you know he had a little golf course out there on the west side of Point Loma? Well, he did. So Spaulding was a very remarkable guy, and I told Dean I have a whole other program called The Remarkable Mr. Spaulding. But Spaulding's the tall guy with the baseball. He was one of the greatest pitchers of all time. He was like the Max Scherzer of his day, et cetera, et cetera. And he still owns the highest winning percentage, I believe, of any pitcher that ever pitched in baseball. So he's a baseball star. But he quit at about the age 28 to form a sporting goods corporation and basically manufacture all kinds of sporting equipment. And he pretty much invented the sporting goods industry. This is something about Spaulding's world tour. He wanted to spread the gospel of baseball. Here's a glove. Spaulding was not the not the first player to wear a glove. He's the first star player to wear a glove, though. Anyway, if this looks like people trying to play baseball at the foot of the Great Pyramid on the Giza Plateau, you are right. And there's some other stuff about Spaulding. I've got to hustle through it. But they produced the first American football, volleyball, basketball. If they produced any kind of sporting good you could imagine: golf clubs, women's bathing suits, bicycles, all of that stuff. Spaulding was a remarkable guy. And so in 1900 in Paris, it was not only the World's Fair, it was the second Olympics happened in conjunction with the World's Fair, and the commissioner of the very successful U.S. team just happened to be Albert G. Spaulding. And so after that, Spaulding retired to Point Loma with his high school sweetheart, Elizabeth. She was known as Mrs. Meyer to the Theosophists. She was a confidant of Catherine Tingley, Elizabeth Churchill Meyer. They were both widowed at the time, and within 6 months, they were married. Here's Abner Doubleday. There's Abner Graves. That's another story I'm not going to tell you right now. But here is Spaulding's book. This is the first attempt to chronicle the history of American baseball, called America's National Game by A.G. Spaulding. And just part of it is they wanted, these guys had a ambition to project baseball as a strictly American game with no European antecedents. So they show you, this is an illustration for the book. It shows you a cricket match. It's a very sedate game, by the way. It's almost like golf. People have to shut up, and then there's polite applause if a guy gets a hit, basically. Where you see baseball is a rough and tumble game, more suitable for the American psyche. That's what they were trying to do. And so this is copyright 1911 by Al Spalding, Point Loma, California. So he wrote this book in that beautiful house. And then here's this. It's another one of my favorite shots. Is the Raja Yoga Academy baseball team. We don't know if these guys were any good, but they definitely had the sweetest gear this side of the Rockies because their patron was Al Spalding. And my brief anecdote about this one is for the Point Loma book, when I had to source this photo through the History Center, and the woman who was helping me out there, I asked her to guess who these guys were. And she looked at it. She said, "Oh, geez." She thought Ryan Aeronautical Team. I said, "Not quite." So anyway, so there they are. And I show you them just because I like the photo. But there's another illustration from Spalding's book showing a couple of early bat and ball type games that were called 1, 2, 3 Old Cat. Depending on how many guys you had, you could play 3 Old Cat, 4 Old Cat. But if you look a little closer, these guys doing these demos are the Raja Yoga Academy baseball team. So if you think about Theosophy and the Theosophical Society as being a very esoteric thing at the beginning of the 20th century, check this out, how it was related to basically the development also of American baseball. Quite the opposite through Al Spalding. Okay. And then there's another great photo that I like. This is looking south. And if you can see this kind of cart track horizontally across the bottom of this photo, that's Hill Street today. You can see this baseball diamond here on the field. There's Spalding's house. And you can see some of their orchards over here on the left-hand side. Down over here to the right, one day they would build Sunset View School. And of course, Al Spalding was responsible for Sunset Cliffs Park. He named it Sunset Cliffs, as a matter of fact. As you could probably imagine, he had these great sunsets that he could see from his house. People call it Sunset Cliffs Park or Spalding Park, but he called it the Albert G. Spalding Esplanade out there. He built these fanciful structures and bridges and stuff. And I don't know if you've seen the old photos of Sunset Cliffs. But anyway, it was really a remarkable development. And Sunset Cliffs opened in conjunction with the Panama, California exhibition of 1915. Okay. It was another sight to see in San Diego in those days. This is Spalding's Pool, and I would like to tell you where that is, except it's a secret. This is the Point Loma Golf Club. So Al Spalding also started the Point Loma Golf Club, which became known as the Point Loma Country Club. They have some of these photos down at the Loma Club, which isn't on Liberty Station, which isn't strictly a descendant of the Loma Club, but close enough. And this won't work because I'm not doing the slides aren't advancing properly. But this is another shot of the Point Loma Golf Club. And I just thought that this looked like a building that could have been on Lomaland. And so I finally hooked it up with a dome. Doesn't it look good? Okay. All right. There's a Roman gate. And you can see how the road was graded here. And Spalding had a lot to do with the nice roads all the way out to the lighthouse. It was not like that before he showed up there. He was nationally one of the proponents for good roads, mainly because he manufactured bicycles. There's the Roman gate. Here's another shot of the Roman gate. That's a great photo. This is actually Lomaland Drive and Catalina Boulevard today. There used to be that great looking gate up there. There's another shot looking across. There's Spalding's house up there. That's a very early shot. And then this is the Greek gate. The Egyptian gate. This is my favorite one. The Egyptian gate was down where DuPont Street is now. In those days, this was known as the road to the Greek theater. So if you went up this way, you came right to the Greek theater. There's another shot of the Egyptian gate. This one is one of my postcards. And in these old hand-tinted postcards, they used to insert these dramatic skies. This is beside the point, but I put this this photo in the Point Loma book so I could say that that image was from the DuVall collection. Okay, so here's another shot of the Grecian Gate. This is looking down Pepper Tree Lane, which is still up there on Point Loma Nazarene. There's the Grecian Gate. Right about that gate is long gone, and all those gates are long gone, and I wish I knew what happened to them. So Lomaland was a center for culture, became a center for culture in San Diego. Here's this ladies' string ensemble. These beautiful screens. This is in the Temple of Peace, by the way. These beautiful screens were, and some of this great furniture carved by Reginald Matchell. I think the History Center might have a couple of these chairs. I don't know if any of these screens like that still exist, but isn't that cool? This is the Raja Yoga International Theosophical, this Raja Yoga Orchestra. And these guys played nationally and internationally. They're very good. They're very well regarded. Here's a women's choral group, the Little Women of Lomaland. Isn't that cool? And this group is a string ensemble with adults and children. This little guy over here on the right, he's one of Spalding's sons. And it's another interesting story, but Spalding had a nephew who was his namesake, also known as Albert Spalding, who was a very famous American violinist. And I thought, here's that guy when he was a kid. Well, that's not the case. This is another kid, and the famous violinist was Spalding's nephew. Okay, and then these guys, the International Raja Yoga School International Orchestra, they played at the Organ Pavilion at the Panama, California exhibition. How about that? This was November in 1915. Sold out, standing room only crowd. How about that? And then this is the Raja Yoga College marching band you might have seen before. This is probably in the 20s. You can see the landscaping is getting, has matured quite a bit in those days. But they also put on a number of theatrical productions in the Greek theater. This was called the Athenian Flower Festival. They put on a number of Greek dramas. Catherine Tingley was noted as an excellent producer. And it's kind of interesting because people don't know much about her life before she started with the Theosophical Society, but she may have toured Europe with a theater company. But she put on a lot of Greek plays. She loved the Eumenides, for example. Here's another great shot of the Greek theater. There used to be this little temple over here on the hillside. Here's an ad for The Tempest, a production of The Tempest, which was something new for the what they called the Raja Yoga players in 1926. I wrote a little story about this, which is actually called A Tempest in the 20s, and it got rave reviews because you could hear the surf crashing on the cliffs below, and it just sounded like the tempest takes place on an island. Anyway, it's that was one of the many shows they put on. They put on Midsummer Night's Dream several times. I think they did Twelfth Night, and they did several of the history plays. But so this was, the Greek theater. The old Globe was opened in conjunction with the Pacific California exhibition in 1935 in Balboa Park. But the Theosophists started playing Shakespeare in San Diego several decades before that. Isn't that interesting? And so this is a little bit about the school up there, the Raja Yoga School. It was a very well-regarded school. This is, this shot from the 20s. But this is what these guys were learning. I believe this young woman here is Judith Tyberg, the teacher. I'll tell you about her. She was a remarkable person in her own right. Here's some littler kids studying geography. Ken Small told me, see that little girl holding that flag? That's his mom. That was his mom up there. These guys are, this is a meteorology class. And this guy, I had to look his name back up, Frederick J. Dick. He was a civil engineer from Ireland. And he also taught this meteorology class. He also taught astronomy, math, and physics at the Raja Yoga Academy. And this weather station was still there up until, semi-recently. It was lying in the bushes and so forth. And interestingly enough, Bruce Coons from SOHO may have this weather vane. Uh, you see the mast of it here, and he's going to donate it to the OB Historical Society. Thanks, Bruce. I have to go pick it up. Okay. This was the Women's Exchange in Mart. These ladies made all the clothes, uniforms they wore up at Lomaland. The Women's Exchange in Mart was something they brought with them from New York. They made all the costumes for all the plays and everything. And at one time, the Women's Exchange in Mart was up here at what's called Sunnyside House. This is up on Silvergate. There's a house where Catherine Tingley lived for a while. Lyman Gage lived there for a while, former Secretary of the Treasury. I think Tingley sold this home to Gage at one point in time. He built his own home over on what used to be called Bow Street, now known as Gage Drive in Point Loma. And I believe he sold this place back to Catherine Tingley. So it has an interesting, Sunnyside House has an interesting history on its own. Here's a music class. One piano. These other kids have these little cardboard keyboards there. Everybody, all the kids learned some kind of music. Everybody learned to play the piano and or other instruments. They called these kids the little philosophers. And I love this photo here. These little girls jumping rope out on the bluff above the Pacific Ocean. And if you if you think these kids are being starved and treated like convicts, come on now. But I always think, man, what would it have been like to live out there? Nobody for miles in any direction. I mean, it would have been an idyllic spot. And this would, probably 1910, 1915. Here's all kinds of recreational equipment up there. I mean, they got a lot of activity. There are dozens of photos like this, men and women playing tennis, basketball. I mean, there was a lot of athletic activity for the kids at the Raja Yoga Academy. Here's a bunch of these kids going down the cliffs for a picnic on the beach. This trail does not look that different these days, if you must know. This is a photo I found almost accidentally when I was writing a story about NPL, Navy Radio Point Loma. There's NPL there. There's the water tower. So if you're familiar with the water tower as you go out Catalina Boulevard toward the point, that water tower is still there. It's not the same water tower, but it's in that same location. And then this area over here came to be known as the wooded, we call that the wooded area now. This Silvergate Drive. That's Catalina. We're looking north. And then this area over here on the left is what the Theosophists called South Ranch. And at South Ranch, where they had a lot of industry and stuff for Lomaland, including their print shop. And at the time, it was called the Lomaland Photo and Engraving Department. It had a couple other names, but this was high-end lithography for the early 20th century. They had some of the nicest equipment in San Diego, and of course, they turned out several publications every month, including the Theosophical Path, several other magazines. They produced children's books, tons of photographs, pamphlets. I mean, but they did it all in-house on campus at Lomaland. It's just this great photo that it's another postcard, colorized postcard, but this gives you some ideas as to the hue of those famous glass domes, which were illuminated at night. And ships at sea could use the domes of Lomaland as a landmark. They could see the domes of Lomaland long before they saw the light of the new lighthouse out on Point Loma. And this is kind of funny. This is from the city directory in 1915, but it's like the Yellow Pages. But she says something like, see if I can read this. The headquarters of the Universal Brotherhood and Theosophical Society on Point Loma. It said that they were no colony or no experiment in socialism or communism or anything of the kind. So in their Yellow Pages ad, she kind of puts in a disclaimer because they came in for so much criticism. Okay, here's the North House up on Lomaland. That is still there. It looks like this. Does this place look like it's 120 years old? Well, it is. The North House backs up to Moana Drive. There's a gate right over here. You can Walk in, it's open during the day. This house also used to have a spiral staircase on the back side, which is no longer there. And I don't know that story. But this is now the alumni house for Point Loma Nazarene. Here's Cabrillo Hall. That's what they call it, and I believe that's what they called it at Cal Western also. But this used to be Catherine Tingley's headquarters, and this building used to be on the other side of the street. This is Pepper Tree Drive here. This is on the corner of what would be DuPont if DuPont went through onto campus anymore, which it does not. There's a big fence there. But they moved originally, this building, I think, was moved from downtown up to the campus at Lomaland. And it was on the other side of the street facing east. The folks from Point Loma Nazarene relocated it a couple doors south, rotated it 180 degrees and put it across the street, and actually rehabilitated this building quite a bit. You can walk in here just about any day. It's classrooms in Cabrillo Hall. Here we have a traffic jam up on Catalina Boulevard in 1903. They used to call these horse-drawn buggies a tally-ho. And you could take a tally-ho from Newtown, about 7 miles, out to Lomaland. This is Catalina Boulevard. This is later, about 1909. So Catalina originally was known as Point Loma Avenue. Now, by this point, it was known as Catalina Boulevard. You can see the big, wide, graded road and some of the palm trees they planted up there. I'm going to show you the same, hopefully the same vantage point today. It looks like that. A lot of those Canary Island date palms are still there. And then this is looking southeast from the Homestead building. This would be DuPont Street. And this is, of course, Catalina Boulevard heading out toward the point. And then a tragic thing happened in 1954. By this time, the Theosophists had moved on. Following the death of Catherine Tingley in 1928, and then the stock market crash a year later, they remained for a while, but they were in bad straits financially, and they started selling off the property just to pay the taxes. That South Ranch property became NEL, for example. But by this time, the campus was owned by Balboa University, which became Cal Western, but there were squatters living in the Temple of Peace building, and they were built a little fire to, cook their dinner, and the place burnt down. So that is what became of the Temple of Peace, and I believe that the Raja Yoga School was also condemned as structurally unsound by that time. So by the time of the Second World War, the Theosophists were basically gone. However, despite this fire, those beautiful doors of the Temple of Peace were salvaged, and they are huge. If I didn't say this, they're 12 feet high and about 6 inches thick. It's really something. So, in putting some of this stuff together for the Point Loma book, I was aided by the folks this is the library of the Theosophical Society up in Altadena, and they were very helpful to me. They let me use all the photos that Dr. Little had used, a professor at Point Loma Nazarene who tried to research the history of the campus and so forth. But during the tragic fires up there a year ago, I saw just a news broadcast, and the reporter was broadcasting from a gas station on North Lake Avenue. And I thought, why do I know the name of that street? Well, the answer to that was because that's where the library of the Theosophical Society was, and the gas station was quite a few blocks further down the hill. As you can see, the street goes up toward the mountains here. That's what happened to that area. So the library of the Theosophical Society was a complete loss, and I don't know how many of their stuff that they had in their archives had been digitized. I don't think all of them. It was not the headquarters of the Theosophical Society, which is still in Altadena, which was not touched by the fire, but that library was consumed, sadly. And then I'll just show you, there's a beautiful illustration. To live to benefit mankind is the first step. It's from the Book of Golden Precepts, and that's about the end of that. End of that. Uh, End of the story for today. I tried to rush through it, so I got done in a timely fashion. But if there are any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them. I guess I'll tell you about our the Wisteria Patio Party fundraiser for the Ocean Beach Historical Society. Check us out on obhistory.org. That's coming up this Thursday. Okay, that's
Well,
it.
thank you, Eric. That was wonderful. I learned a lot, and I'm sure I guess since we had a few minutes of technical difficulty, we'll go a few minutes longer to take a few questions here. What is left to see from Lomaland today?
Well, there are quite a few things. Cabrillo Hall that I mentioned is still there. You can kind of walk in there any day. Al Spalding's home, which is known as Mieres Hall, is still there. That place I showed you called the North House, um, the alumni building for Point Loma Nazarene, that's also still there. There's a little annex building next to Spalding's house, which is still there. There's a place called the Casa Rosa or the Rose Cottage, which is still there, which is, I believe it's might be like the infirmary or health center or something like that on Point Loma Nazarene now. Um, what else is there that you can still see? There's quite a few things, but those big buildings are gone. And the Greek Theater, of course, is still there. So there's a lot you can see that's been there for 120 years.
Is the Spalding home open for group tours?
They frequently do group tours. My friend Beth Zedeker does tours of the Spalding House. The Point Loma Nazarene used to have a fall festival, and tours of not just the Spalding House, but some of the other buildings were a part of that fall festival. And I think maybe they probably stopped that, during the pandemic, and I don't know if they still do that. But yeah, there are tours. So and it's well worth going up there. They'll let you walk in up there, but like I say, it's administrative offices now, so they probably won't let you walk all the way around it. But yeah, you can go in.
All right. Wizard of Oz author L. Frank Baum and his wife Maud were interested in Theosophy, members in 1892, and stayed often at Coronado during the early 1900s. Do you know whether they were involved with this Point Loma community?
That's a great question. And if you've ever gone over there to Coronado, there's a house that they call the L. Frank Baum house. Well, he didn't own it, but that's where he stayed when he was over there. And this I'm going to attribute this to Kitty McDaniel, who she hypothesized that L. Frank Baum could probably see the domes of Lomaland illuminated at night when he was staying at Coronado. It would have been able to see that. She thinks that might have been his inspiration for the Emerald City. I don't know that. I like that idea though. That's a good story.
Yeah,
Um,
I've heard that, and
oh
the
yeah, uh-huh.
White City in Chicago, 1893, and there's a
Oh, okay.
and the
Yeah.
hotel itself.
But
But
I'm sure he did come up to Lomaland from time to time. Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
yeah. I guess we have time for one more. What famous surf break did you mention at the beginning?
Oh, okay. Well, that's a uh, what's called Ab, used to be called Ab Reef, shortened to Ab. And then Sub is a place just slightly north of that. There, all those little breaks down there have a name. And there was one, um, interestingly, right at the foot of Ladera Street, that break was called Garbage for years. And people, it was thought that the Theosophists used to throw their garbage over the cliff. They also used to think that perhaps the surfers called it that so people, would think that the waves were garbage, and they wouldn't come down there. But there was another place that I called Pillars, kind of inside of Garbage. There's a place where I used to kneeboard when I was a kid, and there was a little temple there with these, fabulous pillars. I just assumed it had something to do with with Madam Tingley, so it looks so weird and old and stuff. And I later found out it had to do with Dan Dixon. It had nothing to do with the Theosophical Society. But there are, oh, I don't know, probably 14 breaks right in that area. They don't all break all the time, of course, but and everybody has different names for these places. But those are a couple famous breaks that Ab and Sub that people certainly know these days.
All right, well, I guess we're about out of time. Thank you for shedding light on the fascinating story of Lomaland, Eric. We really appreciate having you today. Thank you to everyone who joined us. Your participation helps SOHO's mission to preserve and celebrate the architectural and cultural heritage of our region. If you enjoyed today's program and would like to support future lectures like this one, we encourage you to become a member of Save Our Heritage organization if you aren't already. Members receive free admission to Penning the Past programs, along with many other benefits, and memberships begin at just $25. Visit us at sohosandiego.org for more information. We hope you'll join us again next month when we'll explore the evolution of San Diego's gas lamp quarter with historian Sandy Wilhoit. Until then, thank you for being a part of Penning the Past. Thank you so much, Eric. It was great having you today.
Thank you, Dean.